right here? Okay. Brandon is going to tell us what he will or will not sign and when. And they are allowed. Okay, let me just tell you, you should have a signing line ticket on the little card that you have. And we will call letters out one at a time. So if you don't have, if your letter is not called, then you just stay where you are. Memory keepers have some very interesting things to occupy your time. So one letter at a time. Please allow me to get Brandon and Harriet back to the signing table before anybody moves. I think that's all that I have to say that you're not going to say. Okay. And you want to come next, or Tom?
I guess you're introducing me, so go ahead.
Okay. These are the memory keepers. These people have had to fill out an application and write an essay to be able to come here with Brandon and Harriet, and they have all interesting stories. So if you have a chance, ask them about this. Tom Burkhart, memory keeper.
Yes.
Well, Rich Books and Music. And we very, very much appreciate all your support of our independent bookstore. Thank you. Now, Tom.
So, hi. We are very, very happy to see so many people here tonight. Wheel of Time has been an important part of all of our lives, and it's nice to be able to celebrate such an amazing series with so many people. We are the memory keepers. I was trying to just talk loud. We are the memory keepers, and we are here to keep the memory of light alive. This is the end of an epic journey, not just in the story, but in all of our lives. There have been many ups and downs and very, very sad moments, but we've made it through to help, because this is a great moment for all of us too. We ask you to please be kind to others, and in the public forum, please, no spoilers for A Memory of Light. All right? The end is near, but we have not all reached it yet. For those who have reached the end, fear not. There are neither beginnings or endings for the turning of the Wheel of Time. But it is an ending. So, this is our opportunity to thank those who put forth the time and effort to see Robert Jordan's dreams come to light. Now, without further ado, the people we've all been waiting for, Brandon Sanderson, Harriet McDougal.
Thank you very much, guys. Wow. So, 23 years ago, I walked into a bookstore. I was 15, and I looked over on the new release shelf, and there was a very big book. I had learned that I wanted to look for the big books. Not because necessarily a big book was going to be better than a little book, but if I found a big book that I liked, there was so much more to love. And if you found a little book that you liked, it was over basically before you figured out that you liked it. And then what good is that? I discovered fantasy novels the previous year, when I'd been 14, in 8th grade. And I'd been hunting for a while for my series. I don't know if any of you did this. I got handed all the early series that I read, David Eddings and Anne McCaffrey and things like this. They were already finished or in the middle. And people would tell me, about these great series, and they'd hand it to me, sort of Shannara, things like this. And I was looking for the one that I could discover, right? I had not been a reader before I discovered these fantasy novels, and so I picked up this book, and I can still remember this, teenage sense of pride in my heart when I read it, and I said, "Aha! I have found something." I got to be a Wheel of Time hipster from the beginning, because when the second book came out in trade paperback, that was a sign to me even though the first one had been in trade paperback and I just hadn't seen it. That was a sign to me that other people noticed how great the series was. And I read the Wheel of Time books all through my career, all through high school, all through college. I absolutely loved these books, and at times hated them. Anyone else have that? I remember when I found out book 6 was not the end. I was not happy. But I went through everything that Wheel of Time fans seem to go through, which is the sense of appreciation and the kind of transition between I'm waiting for an ending to I'm just going to let Robert Jordan do whatever he wants to do, and I'm just going to keep reading because I love these books. In 2007, passed away, I was surprised as everyone was. I don't know if you guys read his blog at the time, but he was very positive. And in one moment he was there, and the next moment we were getting the news that he had passed away. And it was a very emotional time for a lot of us. For me, I had become a fantasy writer in part because of my love for his books. I had learned to write novels by reading his books. And I had chosen my publisher because it was the publisher of the Wheel of Time books. And so it was the end of an era. We talk about the end of the Third Age and the start of the Fourth Age. Well, the end of that age for me was when Robert Jordan passed away. And I didn't think that for a minute that I would be here 5 years later. I didn't apply for this. I didn't know Robert Jordan. I didn't know Harriet. I just got a phone call one day asking me if I would be willing to help finish the Wheel of Time. It has been an amazing journey. These last 5 years have been unparalleled. I can't explain to you guys the awesome opportunity it was to look through his notes, to see things in the middle of their progress as a writer. I haven't grown as much as a writer since writing my first book. It's been amazing, it's been wonderful, and yet over it all there's been this cloud that I couldn't have ever done this if my favorite author hadn't passed away. And so people ask me how I feel. It's really a weird mix of emotions. It's probably similar to the mix of emotions you will have or have had as you read the last page, where it's wonderful, it's awesome, you got to be part of this, but now it's done, and there's sadness. You spend 23 years waiting for a series, and when it finally comes, it's like Christmas. You opened up all your presents, and now what? How many of you guys picked it up in 1990? Yeah, there's some of you here. I know that feeling. So I can move around. We're going to go ahead and run this primarily as a Q&A with you guys. We found that that's what people really like to hear. So we'll spend the next half hour or so answering questions that can be for me or for Harriet. I will repeat every question, even if it's for Harriet, just so it goes through the PA system so you can all hear it. I don't know how much you guys know about Harriet, but Harriet was the one who discovered Robert Jordan. Yes.
Is this on? Yes, it is. He was lying around loose at the time.
Harriet was one of the most important editors in science fiction and fantasy, and has been throughout her career. She edited Ender's Game, if you've ever read that little book. She discovered Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time, and so and then she married Robert Jordan to make sure that her editorial advice gets taken.
Well, there were other reasons too.
But why don't we go ahead and start having some questions come at us? What are you guys curious about knowing? Yes, sir.
I'd like to first start with a big, huge thank you to Miss McDougal for finding Mr. Sanderson and encouraging him to finish this series when we all lost your husband, as you shared that with us. it was traumatic for us, wondering what would we do without the ending. But thank you for finding him, and Brandon, thank you for this investment of time. I'll admit I did not know about you before that period, but I have really enjoyed your book. So thank you very much for investing in us and investing in the story. The question I have is, are you going to be able to share completely yours and which were completely Robert Jordan's?
I will eventually be able to share this because Harriet has expressed an interest in releasing all of the notes to the library that has Robert Jordan's papers in Charleston. And once that's there, the cat's pretty much out of the bag.
Yes. And as for your thank you, you are very welcome. I must say, when I chose Brandon, I knew he was good from what I had read. I didn't know how very good he is.
Well, I wasn't as good then as I am now. In regards to your question, I'm still for now avoiding saying a lot of the details. Just until people have finished the book and things like this, I know people have trouble staying away from spoilers, so I don't want to say these things. I will just repeat things that I've said before, and we'll leave it at that for tonight. In Gathering Storm, if it was Egwene, a lot of those scenes were more Robert Jordan. And if it was Rand, a lot of those scenes were more me. If it was in Towers of Midnight and it was Matt, a lot of those scenes were more Robert Jordan. And if it were Perrin, a lot of those scenes were more me. And in this book, the beginning and the end are more Robert Jordan. In specific, the epilogue was put in with very little touch by us. And the mid parts are more me. And, you know, I've said here and there some other things, but I don't want to give spoilers that you can find online. Eventually, we'll be more forthcoming with this. But you know, once the notes are out and everything, you'll be able to look at those and see a little bit more of why I did what I did, perhaps. All right, other questions right here.
So, I was reading all the comments, because I like spoilers. And one of the things came up was, to me, happier and more fun in the last 2 books.
Mary.
So I thought that was your style, lighten them up. And then you just said, though, that Jordan fell on not in this last book. And so, have you read the same comments, and what do you say about that?
I say, certainly, Matt is the most divisive of the characters among fans with regards to these last books. The Matt in Gathering Storm was me. The Matt in Towers of Midnight was more Robert Jordan, though there were a few scenes of me. I have a perspective. One of the things you run into with this, I can spin this into a larger sort of story. See, I've been reading the books for 23 years. When I picked up the series, I had read, you know, Eye of the World 8 or 9 times. And because of that, when each of us read a book, we bring something to it, right? And we reinforce that whenever we read. I have a friend, Marilyn doesn't have a mustache. Now, I can show my friend on the page where Tom Marilyn has a mustache, and my friend says, yeah, that line doesn't exist in my copy. This is because this is part of the power of fiction. This is what I love about fiction, is what we do is, in a way, we write a script which you direct in your head. And readers have a different perspectives on how much freedom they have for changing that. I say you have line item editing capability. You change it how you want. And that's how I've always read. When I came on this project, I brought a lot of baggage. I brought 17 years worth of baggage, and some of it I had to have beaten out of me. Like, you know, there are various things, like some of my pronunciations. I'm sure we all have some of these. But other things like, you know, how I viewed Tar Valon. I did not view the bridges being as big as they are. Like from my perspective, you can stand on one and you can just see like the bridge. They're like 3 miles long. You can't see. I mean, they're just enormous. There are things like that I've imagined since of youth. And there are certain characters I interpret a certain way that some people I don't think would interpret the same way. And that's something that you get just by having the factor of that I'm coming on. I've always tried to interpret the characters, I believe, as Robert Jordan interpreted them. However, we can argue all day about how Robert Jordan interpreted things. And that's something that I don't think people quite understand is, we could sit down here and we could have a distinct argument where we both say this is how Robert Jordan said it, and we would both be right because we both read that text. And so I interpret Matt in a certain way. And I believe that I got better at writing Matt as I went along. Matt was one of the really hard characters because he's so complicated. And what's complicated about Matt, narratively as a writer, he's one of the Wheel of Time whose thoughts and actions are at a disconnect. This is really hard to write the right way. Perrin, the way he thinks and the way he acts are pretty much in line with one another. It's very distinctive. It's very Perrin. It's very awesome. But he doesn't do the same stuff that Matt does, where he has this big thing going on in his head, and when he opens his mouth, a completely different thing comes out. And they're both hilarious, but they're in contrast with one another in their hilarity. This is a difficult thing to do, and I think it's something, if you read the Wheel of Time books again, you can watch Robert Jordan develop this character and come up with this sort of awesomeness that is Matt across the entire series. And it took some writing to get Matt right, I feel. All right, let's do another question. That's like half an answer, I'm sorry, but that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it. All right, let's go over here. Yes.
You don't simply in your books have the depth and darkness that Rand did.
Mm-hmm.
Was that hard to write? If so, how did you get yourself to feel that clear path?
Was Rand's darkness in the book particularly hard to write? It was definitely, but there's a piece of the writer that says, wow, when this is tough and it's like this, that's good. Because that means, number one, you're pushing yourself as a writer. You're doing things that you haven't done before. Number two, if it's emotionally hard for you and you're doing the writing the right way, it's going to be emotionally hard on the reader, which is a sign, not thus, but a sign of fiction that's working when you're emotionally invested. And so, yes, it was hard. How did I get myself into the mindset? It's the same way I do everything, which is before I sit down and write, I just really, there's actually a lot of method acting to writing, where you try and become that character for a time. And Harriet actually has a story about this with Robert Jordan. This is how he did it. She could always tell, right? He said,
well, I could generally tell when he came in for the evening news and supper whether he had been writing a good person or a bad person. In particular, there was an evening when he came in and he sort of slammed the door behind him, and then he was skulking around the wall like this. And I said, you've been writing Pat and Fane, haven't you? And he said, how did you know? Well, he usually came in and said, hello, honey.
So yeah, you just get into the mindset and you go, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you throw it away and you try it again the next day. All right, other questions? Let's go right here.
Going back to Matt, the conversation related to him that is very conspicuously left off screen.
Yes.
In a memory of life. Did you give any thought to actually writing that, or decided to...
Do I give thought to writing the conspicuous scene that happens between two characters, one of which is not Matt, but it relates to Matt because Matt orders it to happen? Did I consider putting that on screen? I did consider putting that on screen, but I felt it was better left to your imagination. In some cases, that's the right choice, and I maintain that that was the right choice here. All right, question. We'll go right here, and then we'll go up to you. So.
I know that I've seen some different things on blogs about some of the intended prequels and what notes that Robert Jordan left, like about maybe a prequel about Tam and finding Rand, and are any of those books potential?
No. I'm sorry about that. But as you all may know, Robert Jordan really expressed his horror at the idea of anyone writing in his universe. He said he would take out his hard disks, rent a semi, and drive the semi back and forth over the hard disks to prevent that. He made it clear in his last months and weeks that he did want the series finished. That was crystal clear. But the rest of it, there was a planned trilogy of what I referred to as the Outrigger novels. He left, it's either 1 or 2 sentences. There wasn't enough for Robert Jordan to be present in those books in the way he would have wanted to be. And the same with the prequels. There just isn't the material that would have him present in the books. I'm sure you've all seen A Christmas Carol, and you remember when Marley shows up, clanking chains. He'd come and get me.
Along those lines, though, there is an encyclopedia that is being done.
Yes, and I expect you all to buy it.
Harriet herself is doing the encyclopedia, and we don't have an estimated date for that yet. Probably 2015, maybe.
In the contract, the due date was 2008. By its nature, it couldn't really be worked on until the series was done. So after we finished working with Brandon last summer, we all went, and now is when the work will begin to whip it into shape. But there's lots of the material already.
All right, in the back.
Yeah, so first I want to say that since there's, a void. So Stormlight Archive's going to fill that, right?
I cannot possibly hope to achieve what the Wheel of Time has done. No, the question is, do I see Robert Jordan's characters coming out in my writing? And no. It might happen unconsciously, but my goal would be to not have that happen, because I want to tell stories about different characters. And it would be the same as if Kelsier started coming out in Dalinar. That's just not something that we want to have happen as a writer. We want everyone to be their own express individual. And so there you go. All right. Other